Ooh, let me see him. Oh, wow. Hi, you can circle over there. You can look at Daddy. Go Daddy, please.
Okay, hi everyone. Sorry for the stall. Welcome to Hmong-American Now. I have here with me today Cindy. Cindy is going to come here today and talk with us about her education. She's going to come here and talk with us about her the work that she's done in our community. As usual, I am going to introduce a little bit about her background, and then I'm going to give her an opportunity to tell us more about herself, more about her work, her education, and then you guys will have your opportunity to ask questions at the end. So welcome again. I'm happy that you guys are here with us, and especially Cindy, thank you for being here with us, even though you are extremely busy. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Linda. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just read Cindy's bio. I will try my best to read it so that it sounds interesting and not just kind of boring. So Cindy was born in Marysville, California. She grew up in Sacramento, California. She now lives in Phoenix, Arizona, because right now she's finishing up her fourth year in the doctoral program in social work at Arizona State University. So she's located in Phoenix, Arizona right now. She received her BA in history from the University of California at Los Angeles, so UCLA, and her MA in social work from CSU Sacremento. She has worked in multiple professions, including community health navigator, medical social worker, research assistant, and as an instructor. She currently is still an instructor and a research assistant. Through her work, she has gained significant knowledge in access to healthcare and working with the older adult population. She has organized and advocated for underrepresented communities, including the Hmong community in Sacramento. So today we will discuss on her insights on how to continue in higher education while remaining committed to helping the Hmong community. We will also discuss on her perspective of the reality of a PhD program and how to survive as a Hmong woman in a predominantly and historically white academic space. Okay, so Cindy, tell us a little bit about yourself, besides the things I've already talked about.
Yeah, so I'm just going to share a little bit about my family because I think there's a lot of commonalities with Hmong-American families. So my parents, like I think most Hmong parents and Hmong families, were refugees as a result of the war in Southeast Asia. And so my parents, they actually met and got married in a refugee camp. So they came to the United States and settled in California in 1979. And so all of my siblings, except for my oldest sister, were all born in California. And I do have two older half brothers from my dad's first marriage. And so in total, in my family, there's 9 kids. I'm number 6 of 9. I love my big family. And just some things that I like to do outside of like academia and all the stuff that I'm doing now, when I can find time for it, is I've always loved reading. I have not found time to read just because of the demands of this program.
Yeah.
So when I can, I read, but I would say majority of my time, my free time, I do just spend it with like family and friends and really just like hanging out. Like that's my thing, is just like meeting up with people, catching up, spending a lot of time with my nieces and nephews. Yeah, so that's me.
Okay. All right. So I'm so glad that you're here with us, Cindy, because I know that you're extremely, busy. You're extremely overwhelmed with the work that you are doing right now in your doctoral program. So I am glad you are here with us. We're going to start off a little bit about talking about your education first. So I want to talk about your BA in history. So you got your undergraduate degree in history, and we know that history, in our community, it's probably not a very popular subject, right? We don't hear that a lot of people go into history. And so when I heard that you got your BA in history, that's actually really interesting for me. So my question is, what made you to decide to major in history?
Yeah, so in high school, and I would say that it even started in middle school, I started to realize that I really loved and I was really good at like world history and US history. And I would have to say this was a result of really amazing teachers that I had. They just really brought out, I think, my love for like learning about people who lived before us, kind of like their thoughts, why they made certain decisions, who they loved. like that was for me a big part of why I loved history, was just like learning about different people and just like why they did things the way they did. But while even learning history in high school, I did realize, like I always felt like something was missing. And, I mean, I can touch upon it later too, but it wasn't until I was taking history courses at UCLA that I realized, I think what I had always felt was missing from history was like, our history, like Hmong history. I was like, why are we not important enough to be included in like high school history or like mainstream history? Yeah.
Okay. So when you were taking your courses in history, what was it mainly focused on? So what were some things that you guys mainly focused on as a history major?
Yeah, so for my history major at UCLA, I did have to take a lot of European history. I took some US history. Those are all just the really general history courses that we were required just to have like kind of a background knowledge of it. But my focus was actually on Southeast Asian history. And I actually intentionally chose to do Southeast Asian history, in the hopes of like, at least one professor even mentioning the existence of like Hmong people. And, just to be quite honest, in all the UCLA history courses that I took, I think I only remember like 2 history professors ever mentioning the Hmong. And, each time they did, like that just made me so happy. But it also made me realize, the need for Hmong people to be involved in like, all these different spaces.
Yeah, okay. So I usually answer questions from our viewers last, but there's a viewer that actually asked a question, which is kind of like the question that I was about to just ask you anyways. The question that I wanted to ask you was, what are the opportunities that are available following your degree in history? And so this viewer asked, what are you pursuing in the degree that you completed? I know that what you're doing right now, it's kind of like, it's kind of away from your history degree, but if you were to stick with that, what are some opportunities that are available with that?
Yeah, and so when I selected my history major at UCLA, I just selected it based off of what interested me the most and what I was most passionate about. So, I did not plan well. I did not do a good job of following through with my degree in history. And so I ended up not using it. And, that was disappointing, but I do have to say that I have friends who have gone on to law school or, they're pursuing their PhD in history. And so, they're doing amazing things with their history degree. So I would say a degree in history is valuable and it's practical. If a young Hmong person approached me about pursuing a degree in history, I would like say go for it. I would root them on. I think it's a really critical degree to have. It's not easy. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that you shared that because I feel the same way. I think a lot of us, when, because we're kind of like first generation, second generation, and, we don't have the resource that other people do. So sometimes, we go into college, when we first go into college, we focus on what we like at the moment, and so we stick with it until we grow up and then we mature and then we realize, what, I want to do this instead. But, I don't think it goes to waste at all because, ultimately you have some knowledge about something that I don't. And so, I'm glad that you actually went into history because then that can actually motivate others to go into that pathway. And I'm glad you told us that you have friends who actually went into their PhD, because I'm pretty sure there are a lot of things you can do with it, right?
Yes. It's an amazing degree. I'd say go for it if you're thinking about it or you're like still, unsure of what to pursue. I would say try it out. But yeah, I do agree with you, Linda, in that I think I didn't have the right mentors in place at the time, and I didn't know where to go to really seek guidance, and so I just didn't use it. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people have this misconception that history is really, really boring, right? And that all you do is, you read, and you learn about, all these policies and, like laws, and it's so boring, So what do you have to say about that? What are some things that you've experienced that totally, debunk that misconception?
I would say that maybe the reason why history is boring is because you haven't found kind of like a a piece of history that is relevant for you. Like, I think I didn't, I loved history, but I really felt engaged in history once I started taking Southeast Asian history, because I feel like it began to kind of connect the dots for me. And I was just like, yeah, like this is, where, like my parents and my ancestors came from. And so it just meant more once I was able to relate to learning. Yeah, and so history can be boring if, like, the people you're learning about, like, you have nothing in common with.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So let's see. Let's move on to talking about what happened after you graduated. So I know you talked about how, like, you graduated, you feel like that you didn't put it to use. And so we know that I shared earlier that after you completed your degree in history, you attended CSU. So you went from UCLA to CSU Sacremento, where you received your master's in social work. So share us a little bit about us, what made that change from, like, history to social work, because those two are, like, so different from each other. At least that's what I think.
Yes. And so just to share a little bit of history about, what was going on after I graduated from UCLA. So after I graduated, I went back home to Sacramento, and I was doing accounting. I was doing accounting for 3 years, which was something like completely unrelated to my degree. It paid the bills, but I was really unhappy. And just to put it out there, accounting is a great field. I have 3 older sisters who are doing accounting now, and I think they're doing great work, but it just wasn't for me because I felt like the social justice bug, like, it bit me really hard towards the end of my undergraduate degree, after I joined, like, Asian student groups to advocate for, like, disaggregation of data on incoming students of Asian descent in the UC system. And so just being involved in that, like, it made me, I think, kind of hunger for more social work. And I felt like just the everyday, like, accounting stuff just wasn't working for me. And so after almost like 3 years of doing accounting work, I started looking into jobs where I could work alongside and, like, just advocate for marginalized communities. And social work just kept popping up. Like, I was looking on Craigslist and on all the job sites that I was browsing. There were just, like, job postings about social work, but they all required, like, a master in social work, like an MSW. So that's when I decided, I was like, okay, then, if the MSW is what I need to get into these spaces, to start working with these types of population, then, an MSW degree is what I'm going to get. But just to be honest too, there are also multiple factors influencing, like, my decision to transition from history to social work at the time. There's a lot of personal reasons going on too. My mom's health was declining at the time, and I was feeling really helpless. And so that really motivated me to want to help other people, especially just, like, Hmong people, just seeing how much I struggled trying to find the right type of help for my mom. Yeah. So that's just a little bit of background.
Okay, and so let's talk about, for example, there are other students out there who finished their undergraduate degree and they found themselves in a situation where, I can't find a job that's going to make me happy, or a job that I can, that's related to my degree. And so I know you were able to make that shift from your history to social work. For the students that are in the same shoe that you were in, how can they make that shift, right? Because I know that in order for you to go into, like, a master's program, there are prerequisites, there are requirements that you must meet first. So then what were some things that you had to do in order to be admitted into the social work master's program?
Yeah, and so in my undergraduate at UCLA as a history major, I was able to avoid taking biology. I was able to avoid, like, a really hard math statistic course. But then when I got into Sac State's MSW program, I got into the program on the condition that I had to complete a statistics course and a biology course, and so those were the prereqs. And so once I got in, they asked for me to complete all that before I started the program in the fall of 2011. And so before that, I was, like, racing to take those 2 classes at a local city college, and thankfully I was able to get all that done.
Okay, so fortunately you only had 2 courses to take in order to be admitted into the program.
Yes.
Oh, that's actually really good then, that's actually really good. So I'm glad you shared that part of your story, because a lot of the time, some of us think that because we graduated with a certain degree, we must stick in that field, So, yeah. I'm glad you shared that. Let's see, what were some greatest challenge for you when you were in your master's program?
Let's see. I would say that some of the greatest challenges for me in the MSW program was, I think, trying to be satisfied with just doing direct practice. And so, I received my MSW from Sac State, and the program is primarily focused on direct practice. And that makes sense because I would say the trajectory of most of the students at Sac State is to work in clinical settings. But I enjoyed direct practice, and I think I'll always have a need to do more types of direct practice because it's just a part of what I enjoy doing. But I started doing community organizing and advocacy work outside of my classes and internships because I wanted a broader range of experience and to really push the limits of how I can help marginalized communities. So that was something that I felt was challenging, was just trying to be satisfied with just, one way of doing social work. But then I felt like I had to be creative. And so thankfully I met a really amazing group of people, a lot of young Hmong professionals who were also doing community organizing at the time in Sacramento too. Yeah.
Okay. Would you say it was it was a disadvantage that you shift over to social work with a background in history?
I would actually have to say that coming from a history degree or just even a degree outside of social work to the MSW program, I felt it was actually an advantage because I came into the program more open to trying more things like community organizing and advocacy work. I just didn't kind of pigeonhole myself into, doing direct practice only. So I thought it was an advantage, but that's just me.
No, you know what? I totally agree with you because, a lot of the time we think that we have to walk in a straight path to get somewhere, but you're actually right because, when I was doing my master's program in education, my undergraduate degree was focused on liberal studies. So, also education, but I thought that I needed to walk that path to go into the Master's of Education program, but I was incorrect. When I was in there, I met so many people that came with a criminology background, a social work background, and they had an advantage to me because they knew so much more, and they combined that knowledge with the new knowledge that they're gaining. And so, I think back, if I would have known, I probably would have stuck with something else and then go into, the Master's of whatever it is, because it's going to extend your knowledge. So I like that you share that because I agree. And I think that it's actually an advantage versus a disadvantage that you have a history, you have, a background with history, because then now you have that and social work, you combine the two together, so that's an advantage for me. I think that's really great that you actually coincidentally did that.
Thank you. But Linda, I'm sure you have tons of advantages too from coming from where you are. So no worries.
Yeah. So I'm going to shift a little bit over to what you're doing right now. So we mentioned earlier that, Cindy, you are in your 4th year in the doctoral program in social work. So in Phoenix, Arizona. I know that in the past interviews that I've done with a few of the guests on this on Hmong Women Now, a lot of them have a background in social work. And so I don't want our viewers to think that, we keep talking about social work, because, in the past I've talked about with them, what are some challenges in the field, but with you, I think there's something different because with you, you're actually in the program right now, in the doctoral program. So we can talk about, the rigor, the challenges that's actually happening right now. And so I'm glad to have you here again. And I wanted to ask you to explain with us, what's the experience like in the doctoral program?
Yeah, so I've been here for 4 years, and I would have to say overall, the way I can summarize my experience is that it's been really lonely, it's been really challenging, and it's been really discouraging. And so those are all the, negative things, but I have had enough good days in this program to keep me going too. So, Arizona is a really conservative state, but Arizona State University, they gave me the best financial package when I was applying to PhD programs. So I went to where I thought I could get the best funding support. And so when I arrived to Arizona State University in 2014, I didn't know anyone. I didn't really meet anyone in the program right away that I could connect with, and that I felt truly understood. I think like my research interests. And so that was a challenge. And for a while, I spent a lot of time, I felt, educating the faculty and the students about the importance of the Hmong and the Southeast Asian communities. And you know, I'll even share that there was a faculty who I had been really hoping to work with, and he actually discouraged me, you know, or tried to deter me from like doing research with the Hmong older adult population because, you know, he felt they weren't important enough. And so after like my meeting with him, I just felt really crushed. And I contemplated like leaving the program because I was like, hey, if I'm not getting supported, then maybe this isn't where I should be. And, you know, at the same time, I was also feeling like I wasn't smart enough. I felt like my English wasn't good enough because, you know, English is a second language to me.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so there were just like so many moments of doubt. And my confidence level was like pretty low, especially during my first year. But, you know, eventually I started meeting the right people. I met a Filipino-American professor in the School of Social Work here too. She happened to be doing research with Southeast Asian populations. And she really just motivated me and reminded me that all the stuff that, you know, like I was seeing as like my weaknesses or my weak spots, you know, she was like, those are barriers, you know, kind of set in place for us to overcome. You know, they're set in place because academia is like really dominated by white men. And so this space is really created for like white men. And, you know, I know that I'm here just as well as, you know, other students of color to kind of like break down those barriers. And so, yeah, I'm like more than ready for the challenge. So it's been hard. But I would say that I've been able to find the right people. I'm surrounding myself with people who, you know, understand my background, they understand my needs and my research interests. And also to any student in academia, or, you know, if you're interested in pursuing higher education, I also want to let you know that I think it's important to seek support from people outside of academia too. And that, you know, support just doesn't have to come from those, you know, like in faculty positions or staff positions in universities or colleges. Like, you know, seek outside support, anything you need. Yeah.
Okay. I'm hearing like this common pattern, like based on what you're saying that, it, you know, having gone through the program, it just feels extremely lonely. You know, the rigor is really, you know, discouraging. You know, I talked to other students other Hmong students who are actually in their doctoral program, and they share the same thing, you know. And so, you know, I'm in the process of submitting my own application into my doctoral program, and I'm feeling discouraged already. You know, I'm feeling a little bit afraid. And, you know, being a mother and working a full-time job, I almost feel like I'm signing away my life, you know, and so it's a little bit discouraging already for me. So hearing you say that, you know, it kind of reinforced that idea that, oh my goodness, you know, this is going to be too challenging. But I know it's possible because, you know, I look at you and I look at all these other amazing women who have done it, you know. And so what advice do you have? You know, I mean, what are some things that, you know, have helped you to overcome all those, you know, moments of negativity?
I would say that what has really helped me overcome all the negativity is to just, you know, stay grounded to why I am in the doctoral program. Because even when, you know, the faculty tried discouraging me from working with the Hmong older adult population, you know, I just had to really stop and say, you know, even if nobody else supports my research, should I still continue? And I have to stay committed to why I'm here. And so I think you have to have like a strong sense of kind of like, you know, convictions in like what you're doing. And you also have to have the right support system. I have an extremely supportive partner, and my family is like rooting me on all the time, especially from like, you know, Sacramento and California. I get messages from my sisters all the time, especially when I'm feeling down, to just keep going. You know, my parents, words of encouragement. They're really good reminders of why I'm here. So yeah, I think just your support network is probably one of the best ways to counter all the negativity that you may encounter in a PhD program. And it's also just seeking the right support here. It took me a while to feel like I had the right support. But eventually I was able to kind of, just start tapping into faculty who were just like, on board with what I was doing. It took me some time, but I found like some really amazing, graduate students who I felt I could relate to. And sometimes it's just nice to go out with people and just like have fun and just like, distract yourself from like all the stress of in a program like this.
What would you say is the big difference between a master's program and a doctoral program? Because, having gone through the master's program myself, I felt like it wasn't challenging enough. I felt like it was easier. It was actually easier than my undergrad. And so, but hearing a lot of people in the doctoral program talking about the rigor and how challenging it is, what are the main differences? What makes it more challenging than the master's program?
Yeah, so the difference between a PhD in social work and master's in social work is that a PhD program is very research intensive. And so that's a shift from like the direct practice environment. That's a part of like the MSW program, especially at Sac State. And so in my first 2 years in the PhD program, I did not work with clients. And I actually really miss like doing direct practice with clients. And so thankfully, I've been able to kind of get back into that by supervising social work students in a more clinical setting. But yeah, I would say that's the main difference is that the doctoral program really stresses, fine tuning and honing those research skills that I think you probably wouldn't get in a MSW program.
Okay. Like I said, I usually ask questions after, but I realize that our viewers are, really active this time. So I'm going to go ahead and just implement their questions and, just put it into our interview, and hopefully we can just help answer them as we go. This other viewer asked, what are tips or advice you have for college students?
Tips and advice for college students. I would have to say that something that I've struggled the most as a college student is financially being able to support myself. And so, I've been able to make it through as a college student by applying to different scholarships, different grants. My family has stepped in so much, so they've given me so much financially too, along with like emotional support. And, I've always had to work as a college student to support myself as well. And so I feel like, now that I've spent like so many years as a student, I feel like I do have tips and tricks on making it work financially. And so, if you're a college student who is struggling financially, feel free to reach out to me, and I can hopefully point you in the direction of some places that you can apply for financial assistance too. Because you get financial aid, but sometimes that only takes you so far.
Yeah.
And I feel graduate programs too, the financial support decreases even more. So I just want to put that out there. I would say that's my tip and advice for a college student. I hope that answered her question.
I think, at least it did for me. I feel like, behind the camera, I'm going to reach out to you to talk about that, because I am a little concerned about financial support when it comes to continuing, education. And so it's a good thing that the viewer asked you that, because I wanted to ask you, the next thing I wanted to ask you was that, you've been traveling ever since you were doing your undergraduate degree, because I know you said you grew up in Sacramento, but you completed your history degree in UCLA, and then you went to CSU Sacremento, and then now you're in Arizona. And so my question is, what made it possible for you to make all those travel to, live, find a place to live, what made it possible for you to do that?
I would have to say, I think one of the most important thing is your will and determination to make it happen. And then, just being kind of like savvy with where you ask for help too. But yeah, I think the financial aspect of, pursuing higher education is something that does stop a lot of people from continuing on. And so, thankfully, ASU gave me a pretty nice financial package. But at the same time, I do know that there are times where, some programs don't give you any financial support at all. But yeah, I would say that there's so many grants out there. Linda, after this, I can definitely give you some, point you in certain directions. Sometimes it's not a guarantee, but I think it's always worth it to try.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, okay. Thank you for sharing that. I think we talked a little bit about this, but let me ask you again if I haven't. I wanted you to tell us about the rigor of your doctoral program, like the rigor, the difficulty, and how it's set up. Because I know a lot of students talk about how your life is pretty much kind of taken away because you're so overwhelmed with work. With just your program's work, and then on the side you have to do all of these internships, and then you have to attend all these school events. And so what's the rigor like in that program?
I would have to say that Arizona State School of Social Work, the PhD program, is pretty rigorous because ASU is a research institution. But also, I think the rigor of the program is also set by me as well, and my own expectations of what I want to accomplish while I'm here. So I know coming into this program that I probably only had 4 to 5 years to learn as much as I can, to work with people that I want to work with. And the faculty here, they really stress the need to publish, to publish your work in journals. And so that's always, in the back of my mind, needing to publish more. And I still consider myself to be a newbie to research. And so publishing is still an area I'm trying to gain confidence in. And I think my writing will always be a work in progress, but I'm beginning to feel more sure and more confident in myself as I jump into different research projects. So I would have to say this program and my experience with it is that it is rigorous, but it's also how much you want to put in and get out of this program as well.
Okay. I'm going to clarify something for the viewers in case they didn't notice or didn't catch on or I didn't say it. I know we said you're in your 4th year in the doctoral program, but you've already completed all the coursework, so all your classes within the 2 years. And so for the last 1.5 years, you are working on your dissertation, correct? And the dissertation has to do with a lot of research and a lot of writing. Is that what it is?
Yes. Yeah. And so the first 2 years in this program was strictly coursework. And so once I finished that, the 2 years I had the opportunity to move on and, do a comprehensive exam. So that's a really intensive, writing exam to prove that you have knowledge of your research area, the population, you know the theories around what you want to research. And then once you pass that, there's another hurdle that you have to get through. You go through something they call the proposal defense. And so you have to prepare a written defense or a written proposal and then orally defend it too. And so I just did that this past April. So now I can move on to trying to get my dissertation off the ground. Yeah.
Okay, so what was the most difficult thing for you for your dissertation? Because I know it has a lot to do with research and writing, and for some of us, writing is probably our weakest strength. And so, what were some challenges for you with this dissertation, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, this one. I think this question, it really does make me think a lot because it's still kind of fresh in my mind. But I would have to say one of the most challenging parts of my dissertation to date has been making a strong argument for the significance or the importance of my study. Because sometimes people will question me and ask why the Hmong people? What's so important about the Hmong older adult population? And so I feel that has really forced me to work really hard at making a strong argument for why it's needed. And I would say that I've done a good job of it. I have to give myself credit in that I've done a good job. And, some days I feel I'm the only person that feels my dissertation topic is important, but, it's okay. It's okay because I know that my intentions with pursuing my dissertation are good, and that, I'm hoping to, better the lives of Hmong older adults. And so I think that's comforting for me. When I really think about, kind of the feedback or just kind of comments I get about my dissertation. And I would have to say that another challenge in working out my dissertation was trying to make existing theories work for the Hmong older adult population. Because theories, they're very much driven by studies mainly conducted with like white men and college students, and so like loneliness theories, which is my dissertation topic, is really driven by like a predominantly like Eurocentric perspective. And so I'm hoping and I'm hopeful that my research will like add more layers to like the complexity of like loneliness, especially from like a socio-cultural perspective.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you to share with us a little bit about your dissertation, because I know I talked to you about it, but we haven't shared it with others. So tell us a little bit about what your dissertation is about. What is it about? What does it focus on?
Yeah, so my dissertation is basically a study on the loneliness experiences of Hmong older adults who are still living in the community. So, you know, they're not people who we would consider to be like institutionalized, so not living in like senior homes. These are people who are still living in the community with like their kids. Some of them live alone in like apartments. And so my dissertation is trying to identify how they experience loneliness, you know, like how they were feeling when they experienced loneliness, what they're going through, like, you know, do certain things exacerbate their loneliness? So that's really what I'm trying to like get at, is to just understand like the complexity of it, because I don't think that loneliness experience is something that's easily, you know, just explainable.
Yeah. I know you mentioned that you feel almost as if you're alone on this dissertation, and that you feel like nobody actually cares but you yourself. And I'm so glad that you chose this topic, because, you know, the thing is that we have very few people who are now in the doctoral program, very few Hmong people who have done research. And the thing is that our community is changing. You know, like back in the days, you know, our parents get to stay home with their kids take care of them. But now in America, so many of us are pursuing higher education, we're pursuing a career, and so we do leave our parents home alone. So, you know, like you said, a lot of these research are done on, you know, like the white community, but now it's necessary for our own community, because, you know, we're leaving behind our elders, and they are very lonely. And so, you know, although I feel like you said you feel alone, I'm glad you're doing that research, because, you know, in the long run, it's going to help a lot of us, our community. And so I'm glad you're doing that research. So yeah, thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Here's another question that kind of popped up from our viewer. Let's see if I can show it so you can see also. Okay, so this person asked, you know, what advice would you give someone who is in college, like a freshman, and who cannot determine what they should major in?
I would say, and I've heard this from other people too, so, you know, this is not like, you know, my expert advice or anything, but I've heard this from other people. They've said, you know, to truly try to get your feet wet, definitely try out like different classes from different majors. And that's something that I kind of did as an undergraduate at UCLA. I did try some different classes. Like I think I did like Earth and Space Sciences. You know, I just tried that out for a GE, but that kind of showed me that, you know, that wasn't an interest of mine. You know, and I took Scandinavian studies. You know, like just I think trying out different things to see whether you would like it, I think is a good way to determine whether you may be going, you know, in the right major. But I would say don't feel like your major in college determines your life trajectory. I think there's so much more to learn after like your undergraduate studies. I would say just, you know, just keep trying your best, you know, because undergraduate studies is hard in itself to get through, and so just try to get through it. Yeah, but I know that majors, they do play a big role, especially if you just are hoping to get your bachelor's, and so I think that's one way to experiment, is to just try different classes.
I totally agree with you, Cindy, and I want to kind of piggyback on what you said, and hopefully maybe what I'm going to say will also, you know, help this individual, because this person is Nancy Vang, and so if it's, I feel like if this question is, you know, directed towards you about freshmen, I think that I like Cindy say, I agree with her. I think you just go in, because a lot of us, we went in like that, you know, a lot of us, we went in thinking that we wanted to do a particular thing, and if we didn't know, just experience. Because, you know, I started off as an interior design major. Like, what the heck? You know, I did that, and it turned out that that's not what I like. I didn't want to do that. I switched to English major. No, I didn't want to do that. And, you know, I worked part-time as a tutor, and working as a tutor reinforced the idea that, you know, I like to teach and I love kids. And so I found my passion in that. So that's when I switched over to liberal studies. And then, you know, I love how you said that your undergraduate degree does not determine your future. It really doesn't. Because, hey, like you said, you were a history major and look at you. Now you're a social worker. You found your passion, you know? Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I agree with Cindy. I hope that helped you, Nancy. Let's see. Let's try and see if we have, okay, we have another question. Okay, so this person asked you, do you have any opinions as to why there is a high percentage of dropouts within the Hmong male college population? That's a really good question.
Do I have any perspective? Was that the?
Yeah, so hopefully you can see on the screen. So do you have any opinions? Yeah.
As to why there is a high percentage of dropouts within the Hmong male college population. I would say just from based off of my own experience, I would say that I think Hmong sons or Hmong men are, they may not be encouraged to really pursue, you know, higher education or even college, and maybe they have different expectations from their families that myself as a Hmong female that I'm not aware of. But I would just say, I mean, based off of my own family, I mean, my family is very encouraging of both the sons and the daughters. And so I would say that I am, you know, I don't think I am too aware of the reasons why. I think there's a lot of speculation, and unfortunately, I don't want to add to that speculation because I think the reasons are still unclear. But I think it does have to do with a lot of cultural expectations. And, you know, I do admit there are a lot of cultural expectations, but there are also a lot of cultural expectations of daughters too.
Yeah,
have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Thank you for being very open-minded about that. I think that's a really good question for me to consider in the future for research, you know, because I am also curious about that. Okay, thank you for all the questions, you guys. I'm going to continue back onto when we were talking with Cindy about her doctoral program. I wanted to ask her, you know, Cindy, how are you managing, you know, or how you manage to find a balance between the rigor, the expectations of your program with your family, your friends, your work, and time to yourself?
So I would have to say that the first 2 years in the PhD program, I didn't find any time at all. And I would have to say that was the time I felt like, I think, the most lonely, the most isolated. But then I started talking to different, you know, just like students, faculty, and trying to understand how they were able to find balance in their own like lives, like their personal lives outside of this PhD program. And what I came to find was that like people were intentionally like taking like one whole day off, or some people were taking like the whole weekend off just to like focus on their well-being and focus on spending time with their families. And so I started trying to like incorporate that into my life. And so right now, somehow I'm finding, you know, just time to take like a whole Saturday off where I do nothing, I sleep in, you know, I spend time watching YouTube videos. Like, yeah, I'm just finding time for myself, and I'm spending that time with my partner too. But I do FaceTime a lot with my family. So that, you know, and I squeeze them in wherever I can. And so I think you have to be intentional about like, you know, being able to balance all these different, you know, facets of your life. I think it's possible, but you have to choose to want to do it. Because I think, you know, if you want to work is always there.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. That's like a reminder for me too. I needed to hear that. And key word from what you just shared, I think it's intentional. Be intentional about it. And so thank you for that. Okay, the next question I have for you is, what do you hope to accomplish with your, you know, after you complete your doctoral program? What is your main focus?
So my main focus after I complete this program is to get a tenure track faculty position at, you know, a university or a college. My hope is that I will be able to get, you know, an offer from a school that serves like, you know, a high Hmong student population. I really want to work with Hmong students because I felt like, you know, I do have a lot of knowledge and experience now about navigating higher education. And, I want to encourage Hmong students to keep going because I see the value in higher education, and it's doable. It's so doable. And, even if I encourage only one Hmong student, that makes all the difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's shift over a little bit to your work experience. We talked about, I introduced earlier that you've had multiple experience in the field of social work. You've worked as an instructor, you still work as an instructor, you've worked as a research assistant, a community health navigator. So if you can just share a little bit with us about, what your experience was like in each of the professions.
Okay, let's see. So as an instructor, I would say is the newest position for me. And I've found it to be interesting and intimidating. And yeah, because in this side now of academia, it's fun and it's stressful because, the students come with like their own learning style, their own learning challenges. And, my intention as an instructor is to help every student succeed. But, it's tough because some students, unfortunately, just don't have the motivation, I think maybe at this time in their lives, or, I do run across, I feel, privileged students who just, get by doing the bare minimum, kind of a hard balance as an instructor. But yeah, I think I'm still learning a lot, and I hope to become a better and better instructor as I teach more. Let's see, in my other positions, yeah, I was a health navigator for Hmong women heritage in Sacramento. And so when I worked as a health navigator, I worked with Hmong older adults. And so, we would assess them for different health needs. These were Hmong older adults like diagnosed with diabetes, hypertension. And so sometimes that meant attending a doctor's appointment with them or helping them find a helpful way to, take their medications. So this work, I would say is actually the catalyst for my dissertation. Because it exposed me to Hmong older adults and, just a lot of the Hmong older adults that I encountered were living alone in apartments. They had some communication with their children, or they were like the caregivers for their grandkids while their children were away at work. So, everybody's trying to make it work in that environment, but it ends up really isolating Hmong older adults too. And so that's what I found in my work as a health navigator. I can keep going, but I can go on for days. So yeah, I mean, I was a medical social worker too. I worked in an adult day health center. And so it was the YOLO Adult Day Health Center. And so in this setting, I worked with chronically ill older adults. And so they would come to us for different services. We had a whole team of different disciplines. We had nursing, physical therapy, recreational therapy, occupational therapies, social workers, really there to help these older adults remain in the community. And I also began to see this as a vital resource for Hmong older adults, especially those who want to remain in the community. And so, that's a future research for me.
Okay. We talked a little bit about your dissertation off the screen, and you mentioned about how you're at the part where you're going to be collecting data from the people in our community, right? And so is there, have you already figured that part of your dissertation out, where how you're going to collect your data?
Yes. So I will be, I'll be starting off with focus groups first. And so that will be hopefully taking place in November, if I can get my IRB approved in time. So focus groups with typically Hmong professionals who work with Hmong older adults, and also Hmong older adults too. So that will be going on November, and then starting in the new year in 2018, I will be doing individual interviews with Hmong older adults to try to understand their experiences of loneliness a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah. And where are you getting the older folks from? Where are you getting them from?
Yeah. So I will be collecting my data, or doing my interviews in Fresno and Sacramento, California. And so for those who are watching, if you're from Sacramento or Fresno, California, look out. I will most likely be recruiting from, Facebook a lot, because I think, a lot of Hmong people on Facebook are connected to some Hmong older adults who may be experiencing loneliness.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I just want to point something out. Somebody said that you are very fluent in Hmong. Just right now.
My mom and my dad would probably disagree, but I would say that I think my Hmong is good enough. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, hopefully, I kind of ask the questions that will probably be helpful to our viewers right now and viewers later on. But I'm going to shift over to the questions that our viewers do have, because I know these are the questions that they have that they need to be answered. So I'm going to scan through and I'm going to ask some questions that they left for us. Let's see. What are you, Christina, the video that you completed? We already talked about this one. Let's see. What was your toughest challenge? Okay, so this individual asked, what was your toughest challenge getting where you are today?
I would say my toughest challenge to getting to where I am today, I think, was myself. My lack of confidence in my abilities to get to here. So I think that's why it took me some time to get to this PhD program, because I think along the way, every time I accomplished something, and like the next thing was ready for me, I think what really paralyzed me was my lack of confidence in myself. And I feel like this is pretty common too. And so I feel like that my own self has been like my toughest critic, my biggest challenge. And I'm hoping that my experience will kind of normalize all of this and help someone else.
So with you sharing that, something just randomly popped up in my head. I thought about, being in the program, do you see a lot of other Hmong people in the program, or is it, not common at all?
Thankfully, actually, I've met a few other Hmong ladies in getting their PhD in social work.
Okay.
Hle from UW-Madison. I've met Susie Vang. I believe she's at Columbia. I've met another Hmong student from University of Minnesota. So I've met a few of us, and but we're all kind of scattered throughout the U.S. But it's been so nice to connect with them. And just to kind of like reinforce like the importance of our communities, and just to be around people who share like common background.
Okay, let's see. So the next question we have, I think we've already kind of talked about this, but maybe they came on a little bit later. So I'll just ask you again. The person asked, what made you want to go into the social services field?
Okay, I would say that, I think I answered that earlier, but basically, I think my need to get involved in just kind of, advocating, being a part of like social justice. So I think that my very limited experience in undergrad really influenced me to be more socially conscious. And, each time I looked into fields that could help me, kind of get into that type of work environment, social work just kept popping up. And so that's why I decided to go into social work, but also, personal reasons of why I felt social work was the right field for me.
Okay, so the next question we have is, what do you know about research in the Hmong population and help-seeking behaviors of medical care and mental health services? So what are potential barriers to access? I'm going to give you a moment to kind of, process that question.
What do I know about research in the Hmong population and help-seeking behaviors of medical care and mental health services? And so I would say that when I did literature review for a paper outside of my dissertation, I actually found that there were a ton of research done on the mental health of the Hmong population when we first started arriving in the U.S. So like in the 80s and the 90s. And so they were like measuring different types of mental health condition, and what came out from those studies was that Hmong people experience high levels of depression in comparison to like other Southeast Asian populations who arrived around the same time. Everybody experienced depression, but Hmong people experienced it a little higher but that was from the population that they were collecting data from.
Yeah.
And so, that may have been skewed a little bit, but those studies just kind of died down in the 90s. And so it seems like no one has really picked up on that. And so I think there has been some shift, but I think it would also be really interesting to continue looking into that to see whether there's been any sort of, intergenerational trauma amongst our generation, like the kids who were born in the US, or kind of like the kids who were born there but came here as like young children. In regards to, I'm like making sure I cover everything. In regards to mental health services, I think there's always the discussion around like the lack of enough Hmong mental health providers. I know of a few social workers who are going to get their license and in social work, and so I think they're going to be really valuable. I think we're like coming up, and I have really high hopes that we're going to tackle like mental health needs of our population. Let's see, what are potential barriers to access? I would say that, the most common thing across different culture is the stigma related to really getting any sort of care. And so, I think that stigma is really ingrained in us because, nobody wants to be labeled as like, someone who's mentally ill, but I think the message needs to be I think provided in a way that is culturally appropriate too, especially for me, the population that I am most passionate about really helping is the Hmong older adult population. And I feel like that has to be culturally tailored, to really meet their needs. And that could be, providers coming out to their homes instead of them going to, clinics or just office space. So, just things that I've thought about a lot when I've looked into what's currently in like the research literature.
Okay, so let's see. The next question that somebody asked is, what inspired you most to be where you are at today? Did you have any strong Hmong mentors through your journeys?
Let's see, what inspired me the most to be where I'm at today? I would say my parents. My parents have been extremely resilient. They both learned how to speak English. And so I think just looking at my parents and where they were when they first got here to the United States to where they are now, and how much, they've really just brought my family out of the situation that we were in to where we are now. I think it's just, they've been the most inspiring to me, and they're a reminder to me, because even my mom, like, she continues to, learn how to read, and the thing is, she doesn't need to, but she still wants to. And so she has been like my biggest motivation, because she continues to want to learn. And I'm like, if my mom, who got like barely an elementary school education in Laos, is this hungry for education, and I'm giving these opportunities, like, I cannot just waste it. Like, I have to continue. And the question, did I have strong Hmong mentors? I would say that I think I had some good friends who provided some good advice, but in regards to Hmong mentors, I think I really didn't meet a strong Hmong mentor. So I got Serge Lee from an amazing mentor for me. He's actually, a professor in social work there too. And so shout out to Dr. Lee.
Okay, so the next question that I'm going to put up, it is a very long one, so it might just block up the whole screen, but I'm going to put it up anyway so that you can read it and answer the question, because it is a really long one. Okay, so let's see, right? So you can read it out loud if you want, so that everybody can kind of hear it.
Okay, so research is in itself a very white idea. Because of that, the process of conducting research is very white. Have you been able to, and or how do you research in a way that is built on Hmong ideologies? I guess, for example, instead of taking notes, etc., while talking to our elders, which may be seen as rude, and instead actually have an authentic conversation, I guess, and authentic oral interview instead of a structured combo while taking note interview. Yeah, so I think that's something that I've definitely struggled with a lot in trying to tailor my study in a way that, you know, that is hopefully not seen as rude. And the reason why I'm doing a phenomenological study, and so, you know, those are the technical terms of the type of study that I'm choosing to do, is because I didn't just want to jump into it, assume that Hmong older adults were experiencing, you know, a certain type of loneliness. Because right now, the loneliness theories and a lot of the scales, the measurements that are available are very influenced by a Eurocentric perspective. And so I felt like if I just jumped in and started using existing scales, that would ignore like all the cultural and kind of like the social impact of, you know, having to migrate from Laos and then to Thailand and then to the US and, you know, some to even other countries before getting here. And so I felt like I tried my best to choose as carefully a study and phenomenological. My interview questions are, they're there really for reference, but I am hoping that my interviews, you know, that I will have questions that just kind of come naturally. But I do have some set questions to kind of, you know, as reference and to kind of keep me reminded as to the purpose of my study too, that it is focused around trying to tease out how loneliness looks like for Hmong older adults. And so I'm going there as, you know, I do have quite an extensive knowledge of loneliness now that I've really looked into it for my dissertation. So I do acknowledge that going into my interviews for my dissertation. But at the same time, I'm hoping that the findings, the things that are shared by Hmong older adults just come out naturally, you know, with just, you know, questions here and there for me. But there are interview questions in place because I do need the reference.
Okay. So let's see. The next question we have reads, your ultimate goal, in short, after you get your doctorate is to work at a university with Hmong students. How does that tie into your dissertation work? Do you plan to continue working with the older Hmong population too?
Yeah, so I feel like I have a really strong desire to work at a university with, like, you know, some sort of Hmong student population, because I have high hopes that, you know, somehow we can come up with a program, you know, to connect Hmong college students to Hmong older adults who are in our communities. Like, you know, find ways in which I feel like we're already like resilient, and to make that work for our community. Because, you know, sometimes I'm like, well, you know, why do we need to pay, you know, a caregiver or like, you know, other people for resources and be there for each other. And so I'm hoping to really tap into like Hmong college students for that, to see how we can come together and, you know, make things work for Hmong older adults in our population. Let's see, do you plan to continue working among older? Yes, I do. I do plan to expand my work to include Southeast Asian older adults as well. So I would say that my the population that I'm most focused on working with are Hmong and Southeast Asian older adults.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So this one asks, you know, what did you do? I think it's supposed to say, what did you do in high school to help you get where you are right now? I think that's what it's asking, because I only see the high.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that that's what they mean too. But what I did in high school to get to where I am right now, so basically my freshman year in high school, I found out exactly what I needed to do to get into a college that I wanted to go to. So what I did was I took, you know, 4 years of foreign language. I took 4 years of everything, basically. I did sports, I did soccer, I joined clubs. Yeah, and so I really tried to be as well-rounded as I could be. But now that I see, you know, younger high school students applying to college, I'm like, I think the requirements for them to even get into college are like increasing even more and more. And, you know, I feel like what I did back in high school is like minimal in comparison to what the high school students are doing now. Like the expectations are just it's really demanding, and you know, like they're having to go to, like, you know, another country program there to get considered, and I'm just like, that for me is like mind blowing, and I don't think we should put our students under that kind of pressure, but I know it's there now. So I'm not sure if my experience would be useful, because it's been so long, like over a decade since I've been in high school.
You know, I disagree. I think that, you know, our experience in high school definitely has like an impact on our youth, you know, because I work with youth, you know, and they are so bright. They have so much potential, you know, they're, you know, someone like me and someone probably, you know, our age or a little bit older, we struggled with confidence growing up, you know, because of the cultural expectations, the cultural norms. But our kids now, their parents are young. And so I think they're experiencing, you know, the American culture different from we are, because they're so confident, they have so much potential. And I think so we can say that, you know, in my experience, you know, I stayed home a lot during high school. You know, I didn't do sports, I didn't do this and that. You know, my parents didn't let me. They were so scared, you know. So I feel like our youth can reflect on our experience and say that, you know, I should experience more than they did, because, you know, I think if I would have been given that opportunity, I think we would be phenomenal right now. We would be even more amazing, you know. But we were so, you know, we were held back in a sense. Some of us, you know, because we grew up really differently, you know. And so you know, I think that our high school, the way we experienced it, you know, for me, it didn't prepare me for college. That's why I went in not knowing what I wanted to do, you know. But our kids now, I think they should experience high school to the fullest. Do everything you want, you know, go to sports and engage with the community. Because when you go into college, you are good to go. You know exactly what you're going to do, you know. Okay, yeah. I'm going to show you a statement that has been made by Charles Yang. It's not so much of a question, it's a statement, but I just want to see if you have, you know, anything to say about it. Okay, so he says, social work is just the surface of mental health, and then he puts, in other words, culture shock. Okay, so let me put that again. He said social work is just the surface of mental health, in other words, culture shock. So do you have anything to say about that? I'm not exactly sure what he's trying to say, but
yeah, I'm not too sure too, because I'm not exactly sure of the full context of that statement. Social work is just the surface of mental health. And, you know, perhaps there is some truth to that, because, you know, social work can only cover so much of an individual. I do think that, you know, people need multiple professions in to really make sure a person's, you know, is truly all their needs are met. I don't think social work can explain all of mental health. I think you need a psychiatrist, you need a psychologist, a case manager. Like, I feel like you need a ton of people to support you, because mental health should be treated just like physical health, and that, you know, it's important. It affects a person's life, and, you know, sometimes it stops them from you know, getting going on their day. And so you know, maybe I kind of agree with Charles. You know, it's just a surface, because you need more people in place too to help the person out.
Definitely.
Thanks for your comment, Charles.
Okay, so here's the next one. So this one asks, you know, what is your thoughts about assisted suicide, and is there a correlation between loneliness and prevalence of suicide among Hmong adults or elders?
What are my thoughts on assisted suicide? And so this will get maybe political, but I support assisted suicide because I have, you know, worked a lot with not Hmong, but just older adults in general. And a lot of them towards the end of their lives, you know, they do pass on in a very painful way. So I for assisted suicide, and that's why I support it, is I think to be there in person to see someone suffer, I think it is very devastating, and I think policy needs to be in place. I know that you know, there's a policy right now, like a bill that's trying to be passed with assisted suicide, and so I strongly support it. Is there a correlation between loneliness and prevalence of suicide among Hmong older adults and elders? A study has not been done on that just yet, so I can't speak to it. So yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that question, but if there was research, I'll definitely let you know, Dale Yang.
Okay, let's see. Let's see. Students will be critical from okay, let's move on. Okay, so this student, or not student, this viewer, Nancy, she say, hi, I think it's great that you're getting to share your experience with the community. Thanks. Here's my question. What is or has been your greatest challenge with forming or writing your dissertation?
Yeah, and I think we talked about it a little bit earlier together, Linda. I shared it a little bit. I would say my biggest challenge was just trying to really make a clear argument for the importance of studying Hmong older adults. I think, you know, we have faculty here at Arizona State University that are from all over the world, like people from China, you know, people from Canada, you know, a lot from the US, but still, like, I was probably the first Hmong person a lot of people met. And so for them, they're just like, you know, you're just like any other Asian. You guys are all doing great. You know, so why are the Hmong people important? And so, you know, like, I feel like that's why I had to do a lot of educating while that, you know, Hmong people are important because, you know, X, Y, and Z. And, you know, we should always be important because of, you know, these reasons. And so I would have to say, yeah, one of the most challenging things to even getting my dissertation going was trying to make a really strong argument for why it even needs to be done.
Okay, all right. So let's see. I think that's one of the last questions we have, and before we move on, you know, I want to thank our viewers. I mean, they've been really active and they've asked some really great questions, and I think you've been so informative, like very, very, you know, informative, very knowledgeable about what you're doing. So thank you for, you know, your honest response. You know, it's been really helpful. Before we've gone over an hour for about 15 minutes, which is okay because, you know, it's been going great. But let's see, before anybody else asks questions, okay, so I don't think there's anybody else, so I want to just ask you one final question before, you know, we say goodbye. The last question is always probably one of the most important to me, and it asks you to describe for us, you know, what it's like to be a Hmong woman, you know, what is it like, and what advice do you hope to instill in other Hmong women in our community?
Okay. So I think as a Hmong woman, what it means for me to be a Hmong woman, I would say that for me personally, I feel like I carry the history of my people with me, and I carry it at all times. In a way, I feel like no matter which space I'm in, I am kind of a representative for my community no matter what. And so I always have to be prepared and, you know, just willing to engage with other people, especially people who don't know about Hmong people. And so for me, like being a Hmong woman, and I think maybe this goes for Hmong men too, is that we will carry the history of our people with us. And, you know, we just need to be confident enough to know that, you know, like we come from a very resilient history, a resilient group of people, and that, you know, I think those are traits that we have to be willing to pass on to the next generation of younger Hmong people. And my advice to other Hmong women, I was thinking about this a lot today, and I kept going back to a quote. I don't know if it's a quote, I think it's a poem by Marianne Williamson, because, you know, she's like, you know, our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And this really resonates with me, and I hope that other Hmong women, that it resonates with them too, because it took me a long time to be confident in my skills, because I think I was beginning to realize, I'm like, you know, I'm beginning to hold more, you know, more and more power, and I'm beginning to see that I am capable of doing so much that it's almost a little scary and overwhelming, but that just goes to show that if you keep doing something, you'll just get better and better at it.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that, Cindy. That resonates with me now that you mentioned it. Thank you for that. Let's see, before we go, I just want to mention to everyone that, you know, if you didn't get an opportunity to join with us, you didn't get an opportunity to ask any questions, it's okay. You can still ask us afterwards, especially for Cindy. She actually left us her email. And so I'm going to show her email so that, you know, if you guys want to go ahead and reach out to Cindy, you can. Let's see if it's showing. I want to make sure that people are. see. Okay, it's actually showing. So I attached her email, and so if you guys want to reach out to Cindy, go for it. She also said that you can actually reach out to her through her Facebook. Okay, so if you do have any further questions about, continuing your education, go for it. If you have any other questions about, her dissertation, her research, go for it. I've been, really inspired by Cindy. So thank you so much for being here, because I think being here with you really, really, clear all the, confusions or all the stress I had. Because like I told you before we started this interview, I told you I was starting my application for the doctoral program, and I already feel overwhelmed. I feel, already not doing it. But, seeing you and knowing that you're doing it and that there are many other Hmong women out there, I feel inspired. And so, I want to thank you for that. And I would like to encourage everyone, that there are people like Cindy out there. There are a lot of them. There are a lot of us out there. And so, keep on going. Because Cindy told me a little bit earlier that it might feel like, it feels like you're alone, but you're actually not alone. So, Cindy, before we close the interview, is there any last remarks that you would like to share with people?
Let's see, last remarks. I would just say I'm excited, for a lot of our Hmong youth, a lot of our Hmong, community members who are pursuing higher education, for our Hmong women, and, just kind of seeing all the potential barriers that we are going to be breaking down in the future. I'm just really excited for it. I know a lot of Hmong women who are doing that already. And so, just keep at it. Please let me know. Reach out to me in my email, my Facebook, message me if you have any questions. I feel like hopefully I can be a valuable resource to someone, because I know how lonely it can be. And thank you, Linda, for providing this platform for us to engage, for me to share my experience. I just hope that it was able to reach, the right person.
I'm pretty sure it did. I am sure it did, and I'm sure it will, but thank you so much, Cindy. Like I've already said, you're so busy, but you made this time, and you made this time to come here, and you've made a change. You made an impact. I know you did. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful night, right? Not day anymore. Wonderful night. I want to wish you good luck in your research, and I totally look forward to it because I know it's going to make a big difference in the future for our community. So thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I saw a lot of my family on here, too.
All right. Bye, Cindy. Thank you again.
Okay. Thank you, Linda.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You guys have a beautiful night. Bye. Until next time.